Alright, so it's me again. This video will be about the scooter and what's going on with it, because I know a lot of people were curious to find out just how bad the scooter was, if it was total loss or what the case was. And I told everybody for a long time, I'm really not sure because I haven't looked at it. Walking back and forth to the garage, up and down stairs, standing on concrete was not really what I wanted to do with my knee at the time, and I can't do a whole lot of work because I've only really got one arm that works very well. So just recently I finally got out in the garage a couple days for a little bit and just checked it over, so I have a better idea what's going on. So the first most obvious thing was I have deer fur on the bolts of the front steering, the steering stem where it holds the shocks. So obviously it took a hit there from the deer. I checked that out, and when the front tire is straight, the handlebars and the steering stem are turned a little bit. So front tire straight, handlebar, steering stem will be turned just slightly. Also, if I look across the front suspension with the front wheel straight, then I notice that the forks are at different angles. So say one's at this angle, one will be just at a slightly different angle than it, and that's another sign that your steering stem is bent. So again, the steering stem and handlebars not matching up with the direction of the tire, and just seeing the shocks or forks sitting at slightly different angles when the front wheel is straight. Pretty obvious the steering stem has been bent. This was a hard crash, so it really wasn't a surprise to me that happened. It actually is a pretty common thing in scooters. This will be the third steering stem I think I've replaced from a crash. I had one other crash on actually my other scooter, where the very first crash I ever had on a scooter, I tried to take a 90-degree turn into a parking lot at like 40-45 miles per hour, like way ridiculous speed, just being stupid. Low-sided it. The scooter itself ran into a curb while it was on its side, and that was enough to bend the steering stem on it. And then one that kind of shocked me of how easily they bent was a friend had a 150cc scooter, actually the same scooter that I owned for a little while. You might have seen it in a couple of my videos. Years ago, he let his girlfriend ride it around his backyard just to kind of get the hang of what the scooter was like. And she hit a tree root, just a small root in the ground. Apparently, for whatever reason, panicked and nailed the gas. The back tire slid, and he said basically she just fell over. It really wasn't even much of a crash. So I didn't expect to be much damage, and then when I checked it out, I thought it would just be some body panels. I checked it out, and the steering stem had bent for just like, a 5 to 10 mile per hour crash in his yard. So these things apparently aren't that hard to bend. So that was no big surprise. I think I have found the steering stem that I need from Scrappy Dog Scooters. Looks like it's about $40 plus shipping, so that's not terrible. I don't believe, from what I can see, that the frame itself is bent. I haven't done like a bunch of checks, but it doesn't appear that the frame is bent just looking at it. The handlebars I don't think are bent at this point. I'll find out for sure later, but right now I think it's just the steering stem. It's also very apparent, just looking at the front of the scooter, that the headlight housing was messed up and the bracket. So when I redid the scooter earlier this year, late last year, I made a custom bracket for a different headlight, an LED headlight, actually like a Daymaker that was intended for motorcycles like Harleys and such as a replacement. Bracket's made of 1/8-inch steel, fairly strong bracket, had a headlight housing that was intended for that headlight, and it bent the headlight bracket very badly, kind of crushed the whole headlight assembly back into the scooter and banged up the headlight housing a lot. So clearly the headlight housing has to be replaced. Luckily, I checked the headlight and it seems to be fine. Everything works. It's not even scratched up or scuffed up that I can tell. I think it's just bug marks on the front of it, so looks like it just needs to be cleaned up, and that'll be okay. I'll have to make a new bracket, which again I'm not really up to doing right now. Also, the turn signals were on that bracket, and obviously it broke off the left turn signal. Right turn signal's fine, but I've got to buy a pair of those, which I think is $25, $30. This is pretty much a naked scooter, but I do have part of the front leg shield that it was really wide. I cut it down to kind of narrow the scooter out that fit the rest of the frame a little better years ago when I converted it over to being a naked scooter. And so what was left of that panel, it broke out a big chunk out of the corner. Not really a big deal. The only thing that kind of sucks about that is I don't know that I'll get a panel that is the same quality as what I had on there from stock, because when I did the conversion to liquid cooled and put the 2 radiators on there, I actually wanted to put a brand new panel on it at that point. I bought a brand new panel from scootertuning.ca. I forget what the brand was called of the panel, but whatever they happen to carry. I cut it down a little bit, and then I was just trying to bend it a bit to flex it to get it around the radiators to install it. Same thing I'd been doing with the original panel, and it just snapped into a few pieces just from a little bit of bending. So clearly the ABS plastic that was original on the scooter was much more flexible and a higher quality than whatever that aftermarket replacement was. So I found that Scrappy Dog has the leg shield. At least on their site it says they have it. I guess I'll find out if it's actually in stock, but I'm hoping maybe I'll get lucky and that's a little better quality than what scootertuning.ca had. By the way, I don't want to give them a bad name. I actually told them what happened. I told them I was bending it in a way that was an abnormal way to bend it. You wouldn't normally do that when installing it. They still gave me a full refund on the part and said they're hoping to source some better quality parts because they're aware that these aren't the top quality, but they just kind of were getting whatever they could get a hold of. But customer service was excellent there. Got a full refund on everything. They didn't ask for anything back, no pieces of the panel. Just told me keep them, gave me a full refund. Let's see, so the front panel, steering stem, headlights. It looks like I got pretty lucky. Most of the scooter, the right side of the scooter has really no damage at all that I can see. The back of the scooter, no damage. Most of the left side of the scooter doesn't even have any damage. It's basically the front and a few pieces of the left side. So the pieces of the left side that are messed up, most obvious one is the bar end mirror on the handlebars. Clearly it took a lot of the aluminum off of that when it crashed. Not a big deal. You can get a pair of those things for $10 to $20, so that's not a big deal. Also, the foot peg on the right side, or left side, excuse me, it hit there. Basically, it might have skinned up the metal on the end of the foot peg a little bit, but more or less it just tore the foot peg cover, which is just a handlebar cover that I slide over there for those. Those are like $7. And there's just some scuffs on the that side of the center stand. So it appears that the handlebar, the foot peg, and slightly the center stand took all the damage, basically acted as almost as frame sliders, and most of the rest of the scooter is fine as far as the left side. So no damage on the right side, back of it's fine, almost nothing on the left side, mostly just concentrated on the front of the scooter. Other than that, when the headlight got pushed backwards, I have a fuse block that sits right behind it, and it pushed the headlight into the fuse block and ripped some wires out of that, which I hope is nothing more than I might have to get some new connectors. Maybe I have to replace the fuse block, but I'm hoping it's just connectors. So shouldn't be a real big deal there. So with everything that is definitely crash related, I think I should be able to get away with $250 or less for repairing all of that. So not too bad. I wish my medical bills were that cheap. Other than that, there's some stuff that I don't really believe is crash related, because some of this stuff was going on before the crash happened, but it's stuff that I certainly have to address with the scooter before I start riding it again. On day 2 of the car show, I rode down to the car show 2 different days, or 2 nights, whatever. On the second day, I noticed that my water pump was sitting out from the engine a little bit when I looked down at it. And initially I just thought, okay, apparently a bolt came loose, or maybe there's a chance I didn't tighten it all the way or something like that. So I just thought a bolt came loose. So I got down and looked at it, and it turns out that the whole corner where the bolt is, the ear for the bolt to bolt the water pump to the engine, had actually snapped off at some point. Not really sure how or why that happened, but it was totally missing. So I only had really the one large bolt holding the water pump on, and then just 2 tiny bolts that attach to the stator cover, which isn't really much support at all. So actually on day 2, I found that, and initially I decided, okay, well, it's broken, I can't get to the car show, you know, what can I do? I don't have another water pump around, so there's really nothing I can do about this. So I went back in the house, kind of gave up on the whole idea, and then I was like, you know what, no, I'm not going to let something like this beat me. I really wanted to go to the second day of the car show, which obviously, hindsight, I kind of wish I didn't, but hey, we don't know these things in advance. So I went back out to the garage, and I wound up cutting down a piece of steel, 1/8 inch thick steel, into a strip, and I bent that to match the curve of the inside of the water pump. I drilled a couple of holes in the water pump and in that piece of steel to put bolts through, and I welded a tab onto that piece of steel that would act as the new mounting bracket, mounting tab for the second bolt to the water pump. And then basically I just bolted that to the water pump, and it actually seemed to work pretty well. I mean, it wasn't a fix that I wanted to use long term, but I thought, hey, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if I can get to the car show. It should be good enough to work. As long as I didn't see the scooter overheating really bad, I wasn't too concerned about it. Didn't really see where it should be a problem. So that actually is still holding up. It held up through the crash and everything, so structurally it wasn't an issue. But the other issue is, I think I'm not sure how long that one bracket or ear was broken off of the water pump, but because it wasn't properly supported and sitting at an angle, the drive under there, the drive wheel, that's just a plastic drive wheel that engages with the rubber bushings that are on the flywheel, had got really wobbly. It had worn that out, and it actually had worn down the rubber bushings as well. So I don't think it was making great contact between the drive wheel and the rubber bushings, and I'm not sure if maybe it didn't drive it full speed all the time with full engagement, or what the deal was. But on day 2 of the car show, I noticed that my temperatures at times would run hotter than normal. They never got really hot, but for example, right before the crash, when I was running about 50 miles per hour, it got up to 160, 161 degrees Fahrenheit cooling temperature, where normally, 2:30 in the morning when it's cooled down and stuff, it'd probably run 130-ish, up to 140 degrees maybe at that point. So it was running 20 or more degrees hotter than it usually would. Nothing alarming, but clearly not normal. So I'm going to have to I think what I'm going to do is replace the water pump drive, the water pump cover itself, the housing or the body or whatever. I actually happen to have a stage 6 water pump that's supposed to be increased flow that I bought a while ago to try at some point, so I'm probably going to put that into the new housing, replace the rubber bushings on there, and hopefully that'll be okay. Then the other issue that I have is that I noticed when the scooter sits, there was a puddle under the right side radiator. And unfortunately, that's not just something that happened after the accident, it's also something that I noticed that weekend of the car show as well. I didn't see a puddle quite as large as what I'm showing here, but this was after it's sitting for near a month, and otherwise it was sitting for like a day or two. So I just saw, some drops, really small puddles before. But there was definitely something going on. And the second day of the car show, before I went down, I checked all the hoses and clamps, all that stuff around the radiator, and I couldn't find anything leaking. So at this point, I'm kind of wondering if where my fan goes through the radiator, it's mounted with those nylon ties, serrated nylon ties basically. I'm curious if perhaps they could be rubbing and maybe have rubbed a tube or something like that and caused a leak in there, or, you know, some kind of damage. I hope not, but I'm gonna have to try to get a pressure tester on it or something to find out for certain in the future if it's if that right side radiator has a problem, or maybe it is a hose that's leaking or something that I overlooked I can't see. So I don't know for sure what the answer is there, but I'm definitely going to have to look into that before I ride again. Either way, not a big deal, and either one, I'm probably got $60, $70 into the new water pump and housing, maybe a little more than that, maybe 80. And worst case scenario, if I had to buy both radiators for the front, I imagine they're still about the same price. When I bought them, they were $78 shipped on eBay. If I could find just the right side, maybe I'd get lucky and get $50 or so. But all I'd have to pay for that. So not a huge lot of expense. I'll have to be reconsidering how I mount the fan to the radiator, I guess, if I find that it was indeed something with the tubes and the radiator itself is leaking. But that's all I really know about the scooter right now. So like I said, generally it's actually not in nearly as bad a condition as I would have expected, considering how banged up I was and how hard the impact seemed to be. The scooter didn't suffer nearly as much as I did. Like I said, I got to replace the steering stem, some small parts here and there, fix up some of the wiring on it, make new bracket for the headlight, replace the housing. Pretty minor repairs, all things considered. So more or less the thing that'll be holding me back there is whenever I actually am comfortable to work in the garage, because like doing a steering stem is not really that much fun when you've got two good arms, and when you've got very limited strength and flexibility in one arm. Definitely going to be kind of hard to do, so that's probably going to wait a while. And honestly, I don't really want to ride anytime soon, because I don't think it'd be a good idea to risk a crash again or something like that when I'm still kind of busted up a little bit. Yeah, so it's probably going to be a while before you see that on the road. And then of course, I live in the mid-Atlantic, the kind of north region. I'm in Maryland, so winter's coming on. By the time I start feeling better, it's probably going to be really cold, start getting in the snow and all that stuff. So really doubt I'll be riding that much anyway. And to be brutally honest, right now, I'd feel like, I said it on the forum, I feel like riding around at about 4 miles per hour anywhere where there's not a barrier. I'll get over that. It's just how it goes after an accident sometimes. So with that, I'm going to end the video. Thank everybody very much for watching. If you've sat through these videos, my apologies if I've rambled. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of get some kind of video, some information out there for all the people that had asked, because I, again, am very appreciative of all the positive words that people have given me. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you later.